It's another Daily DTG. I'm Brian.
I'm Dean.
And we have Alan Howe with us from a wide variety of different history that we're going to cover. But you're currently with...
I'm with Easy Way Systems out of Delano, Minnesota.
All right. Let's get to it. It's the Daily DTG, and we are back and talking with industry veteran in just about every portion of this industry from way back when. Yeah. Alan Howe, who we appreciate you being here on the
first official guest.
First official guest, yes.
I'm honored, man. I'm honored.
Never get rid of that. You
never.
Can hold it proudly.
I was number 2 guest on I think a podcast that Richard Greaves and Scott Fresner did. I was like their number 2 guest once, but never number 1.
Number 1.
Number 1 here.
There are always
number
first.
1 here.
Another accomplishment. I'm ready to retire.
There you go.
Well,
so, yeah.
Well, yes. But the fun part is you and I have a history that goes way back. Unfortunately, as I said on the previous episode that we did, excuse me.
This is the infamous Alan.
This is the infamous Alan Howe, who I blame all of my woes on for getting me into this industry and never being able to escape the industry.
By woes, do you mean being the entrepreneur and ability to educate people and stuff like that?
No, I mean all things bad that have happened to me, I blame on you.
All the good stuff, not my fault. Got it.
Exactly.
Dean gets credit for good. I get credit for the bad. Got it.
Hey, well, you know.
No, but we actually go, in the last episode, I sort of talked about how I got started in screen printing back in high school at New Philly. Yep. And that is actually where we met. Now, that whole story, I sort of elaborated a little bit. I didn't stretch the truth, just so you know. But I am going to give you a chance to give your side of the story. And I did leave certain things out. If you would like to bring in certain aspects of that story, that is up to you. I'm not sure what the statute of limitations are on some of that stuff.
Well, in order to get a full recap here, you should go listen to episode 3.
Yes.
So this is a continuation of that.
Continuation of that. But we met in
I don't even know what year that was, Brian. You weren't even
1980.
You were a junior.
It would have been 87, 88 year at that time. Because I started learning about
87, 88, or it had to be 89 then.
I'm not sure if I was right. But anyways,
well, basically I was 4 years old.
It was a long time ago.
And I was young. I was probably 21 at the time. So I lived in New Philadelphia, Ohio, while I'm in Detroit. I live back in Michigan now. My adult life started in 1985. I was transported, a bigger story, to New Philadelphia, Ohio, Tuscarawas County from Metro Detroit, which at that time is still next to the largest Amish population in the country. And being a street kid from Metro Detroit freaked me out to death.
Note street kid.
Yeah.
Never seen a horse like that before, huh?
You know, I came down 250. There were safe water signs for that, and that was for some of the horses back then. So it was weird. But I started in screen printing in '87. I worked for an equipment manufacturer, Harco Graphics at the time, and then worked for a distributor called J Products out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And, you know, we sold everything from screen printing ink to emulsion and all that. So the high school here had a graphic arts and screen printing class. I met the teacher, and I came and taught and lectured just on what screen printing was. It was more than T-shirts. And I had prints from companies around the area. National Cash Register was just south here, and they printed circuit board. And Colgate-Palmolive was printing bottles out of Cambridge, Ohio. I don't know if they're still there.
Yep, they are.
Screen printed circuit boards?
All circuit boards are screen
with like
printed.
a metallic
and still
inductive ink?
Yep, and many of them still are. Still.
People don't think of this stuff. I mean,
membrane switches and stuff. That's called all functional and industrial printing. And then I had stuff from Camelot Music. It was a music store. I had a big 4-color process on foam core board, and this was before the days of printing out your own films.
Print, yeah.
And that was done by LSI Grady McCauley up in North Canton, Ohio. So, and then I had some stuff from a local company, Miller Studio, did wall sconces and stuff. And it just give the kids more that there was more than just this little art stuff that they did. And
there's a commercial application for
there
it.
is, that it's a monster business. And then whether you're going into engineering or chemical manufacturing or anything, there is a place for it. You know, all companies, you guys with RTP, you have engineers and stuff, and you know, you're working on that stuff, and people forget about that. You know, for us, we live in a t-shirt world, and you know, that's important. It saves lives every day. It doesn't.
Yes. It keeps them fed.
It does keep them fed.
And it keeps people clothed.
It keeps people clothed, which we need that.
Which we do need that.
Yes. But there is more to it, too. And so while I'm teaching this class and doing that, they show me work. The kids are showing me stuff they did. And they show me this print, and it was a 2-color print. And it was very nice. And I said, that was done in this class? They said, no, it was done by a kid who's not in this class right now. It was Brian, and you were in English or something. And they went and dragged him out of it. And they got him, and you know,
I thought I was in trouble.
But yeah, but Brian, you were a fairly good student, so it was like, okay, yeah, no problem, and all that. And so we get talking, and you learned by reading books and looking it up, because this is
there was nothing out there.
Grandchildren, this is before the internet.
Before the internet, and I didn't even have access to the trade magazines at that point in time. I didn't know what Impressions was.
Yes. And so you learned through the local library, and you built your own equipment.
The wood press.
Yeah.
We talked about that with the wood pegs and everything. Which,
and you know, so he's showing stuff. Well, then all of a sudden, the idea comes up, not from Brian, from the teacher going, you ought to take him to a shop that has an automatic. Well, I was installing the next day. There were 2 automatics in Pittsburgh. And I was so young, I didn't know how to say no. Next thing you know, I'm trying to throw up smoke screens going, no, I need releases and all this, and we have to do... excuse me, do all that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, we talked about this yesterday a little bit. It's like, you could never get away with this today.
Never.
No.
Next thing you know, Brian has $1,000 video equipment from the school. I'm meeting his parents that night. There are medical releases signed, and I'm going, what the freak have I gotten myself into? And I said, all right, I'll pick you up at 5:30 in the morning.
Oh, God, I remember that. Yeah, I'm thinking like a kid. Are we there yet?
Yeah, because there was no freeway to
it was down
Pittsburgh
22 and Tappan and out
back
22.
roads.
Now, what
and he says he still has the tape too.
I have the video tape somewhere.
The sad part where my failure was, this was a shop printing university stuff.
Yeah. And what kind of university? And
well, and it was bootleg stuff, and I didn't even think about that at the time. And this is a shop that got hit by the feds for bootlegging Rolling Stones Steel Wheels tours.
Oh, that's right. It was Rolling Stones, yes.
But I mean, they had 5 automatics. They were just killing it. And yeah, and it's in a horrible part of Pittsburgh, and Brian's terrified, but he's filming this.
Wait, again, I likened it to the bombed out section of Beirut. On the 3rd floor, we get in this freight elevator in the middle of the worst part of course, I'm from New Philly, Ohio, which is almost Amish country.
Yeah. There was no crime.
Yeah.
Back then, there was literally no crime.
Someone stole a horse.
Yeah.
But this, it's like on Pittsburgh, worst section, bombed out building, 3rd floor, industrial.
City.
No
dirty
sign.
industrial. This is like Mad Max type crap.
Yeah.
And I'm like of course, I'm like a kid too. I'm like this is cool.
Where is he taking me? I'm not coming out alive.
But this is cool.
I shouldn't have told him that I still have both my kidneys, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think.
So, but Brian videotapes it, and I just remembered the one guy going, "Come here, kid," and he holds up this check for
$50,000.
$50,000 and goes, "This is what it's about, baby, making money on there."
This is why we. It was funny. He goes, "This is why we do what we do, kids."
Yeah.
Think of the balls on this guy, though. You have a kid in there with a video camera.
They didn't care.
And he's bootlegging stuff.
Well,
what the? And then
how responsible was I to take him there?
Well,
looking back now.
We'll give you the benefit of the doubt there, right?
So, but it was a chance that, automatics weren't common at the time.
Now, they had 2 and putting in the third, I think, or were they?
3rd and 4th at the same
Third
time.
and 4th. Okay, that's right. Because I remember it was on that back wall. I remember putting the lines in, and I remember the piles of misprinted Nittany Lions, because I got picked up a Nittany line with the official holographic CU.
They had it all. Yeah.
What size automatics were they?
They were our gauntlets.
Gauntlets.
They were like 10 colors.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which were gauntlets were the smallest automatic out there at the time.
And they just let me roam the factory. That was the crazy thing.
Yep.
What the
Javelin wasn't around.
Oh, the Gauntlett was around before that.
This is like late 80s.
Okay, yeah. Javelin
So it was in
90s.
automatic screen printing. It was Advanced American was the big one, and Precision, and then M&R was a small fish.
Oh, and they're massive now.
Yeah,
very cool company.
So, but it was all for me, all about education. How can you, further the industry? How can you give back? Because I didn't know what I was doing. I was literally a street kid from, Metro Detroit with no goals, and all of a sudden, wait, I'm running a sales area and learning stuff, and
abducting underage kids, taking them to Pittsburgh, out of state, across state lines.
Abducting is the word we want to use here on video. This is going out. Thank you.
But
with
I was protected. I was protected.
Because you had an unlicensed gun in the car?
Oh, yeah. As an underage kid, I had an unlicensed gun in the car.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So,
that might
I knew
a school trip. Again,
I knew where I was going.
This would never happen again today.
But you know what? And all that, it was education. Yeah, we could never have done that now.
No. Gosh, no.
But Brian, this shows, and I don't know if you think about it, but I do, the trust that the school had in you, because you weren't just another kid. You had a good reputation. You were a good grade school. Your parents were known and stuff like that. And so they trusted you with that.
That was before I burnt the school down.
Yes,
allegedly
burnt
the school down.
Yeah, exactly. And
I told you we'd be bringing the entertainment, right?
But
at some point.
You know what? The cool thing when I think about it is we were both so young.
Oh.
And like I said, you were 17, 16?
Yeah, somewhere in 16,
and I was
17.
21. So, yeah, I'm only 5 or 6 years older than you. It always seemed a lot more.
Yeah, because you were the old man. That's why I had the joke. I'm like on, I met you for a short brief of time. It's like, yeah, let's go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
And I don't even know what we talked about on the way there. You probably slept. I just drove.
I just remember driving by Tappan, and I'm thinking, I don't think I'd ever been to Pittsburgh at that point.
Yeah.
I'm like he's taking me, where the heck am I going?
Yeah.
Literally, that's the funny thing. But it was educational from that aspect. I got to see a real shop. And to be honest with you, I think that's missing in today's school system. Yeah. We've gone from, teaching math, science, and I forget what we're rated in the world, 30th or 50th in like actual educational stuff, but I think we rank right at the top of all the wokeness crap. That's another topic for another whole thing.
Exactly.
We don't want to open up that can of worms.
Being able to actually see, that's what I enjoyed. I'm not even sure what they have today for an industrial arts, but it's interesting because we did woodworking, we did the screen printing. I did electrical and all that stuff. Now, like Buckeye, the Buckeye Joint Vocational School. They have all these different programs you can go into and learn different trades.
I mean, even so, when I was in high school, 03 to 06, I was at the end of like wood shop. Like we still we were using like saws, and every year some kid would cut their finger off, and we were making things,
Right.
But by the time my youngest brother, who's 6 years younger than me, got into the school, it was all.
It's probably because of liability. And crap.
And it was,
it's sad, actually.
It is pretty sad.
The high school I went to,
quite a bit.
We had auto shop, but we had a 6-bay auto shop with lifts and stuff for our cars. So I'd pull my car in.
Well, that's where you took the cars that were fenced and stolen, and you worked on them, and you
By auto shop, we're talking a chop shop.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
No.
It was Detroit.
But we had that. We had welding and all that, and I don't know what they do.
You have to go to a vocational or a
to learn a lot of that
style
stuff.
school.
Yeah.
Now
should be pushed.
But I will say this: they have upgraded. I mean, they're a lot. It's a lot more with it as far as technology wise and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The yearbook and editing and all that stuff.
All the design programs.
For that was my start into, prior to meeting you, I don't know why I developed a love for screen printing, but I think it was maybe the challenge and everything. But what we ended up doing, I mean, I learned it, got hooked up with you, and from that point, we just really stayed in touch over the years and everything.
We lost touch when you went to college.
Well, because I was trying to do the college thing.
And you went to work for Solo Cup, too, afterwards.
Red Solo Cup.
There we go.
And yes, oh, by the way, since you work for a chemical company, did you know that dihydrogen monoxide kills more people every year than could be imagined?
We don't use that in easy way.
Oh, you don't use dihydrogen monoxide?
Not that you or anybody else knows.
Oh, okay. Look it up.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, I mean, I went to college, and I actually, we talked about this, I think, a little bit yesterday, or in the other episode, I was going to be an aeronautical engineer.
Right.
Because I loved flying at that point. I actually got into radio control airplanes in middle school. I had a best friend that his dad was into it, and I learned how to fly radio control airplanes, built my own stuff. But when I got into college, I realized everything I had ever really done was business-oriented. So I switched to business. And that sort of began the journey of, trying to do a little bit of screen printing in college as to make some extra money besides working on campus. And then I worked for Solo Cup for a year. We talked about that, working in the real world.
In logistics, wasn't it?
Yeah, in logistics, transportation logistics. I was in charge of a distribution, in charge of all the production that was manufactured at several DCs, distribution centers, making sure that got out to the other DCs.
Right.
And corporate really wasn't my gig. I'm a glutton for punishment, which is why I do our own.
Corporate wasn't my gig too. That's why I quit my corporate job to start a screen printing business.
For some people, I think it's a great choice. But I think for the three of us, you've been basically, I wouldn't say corporate, but you've done a wide variety of things.
My best years have always been when they were smaller. I don't want to say smaller, but more independently owned. I worked for an international company for about 4 years, and it was the best of times and worst of times. And the worst of times seemed to be worse than ever towards the end. So
we ended up hooking. I moved back and started my shop up again.
You moved back, and I heard you moved back through your old graphic arts teacher. I ran into him at a coffee shop and told me. And so I stopped by one day.
Yeah. And the funny thing was you were with Easyway at that time.
I was.
And I remember, which was sort of funny because the dip tank.
Yep.
I was like on.
This would have been 2000.
Yeah, right after I had
2000,
sort of opened up the shop there.
Easyway just brought the dip tank back. So dip tank technology is not new. Easyway didn't invent it. But it was used with metal stuff, metal dip tanks, and hot solvents that were heated. And it was just for metal finishing. It was brutal. And John Schluter brought it back in a plastic dip tank with a more environmentally friendly product. And so I had the privilege of beta testing that and helping bring it to market. And Brian bought one. So being the entrepreneur you are, you had CDTs, and you bought an auto.
Not the dip and strip? Is that the?
That's CCI's version.
Oh, okay. All right.
Easyway invented it. Everybody tried to knock it off. And I remember telling John Schluter, the owner, we're sitting there in Dayton, Ohio. And I said, in Dayton, Ohio, and I asked him, I said, how long do you think before people knock this off? He goes, I don't know. I go, 2-3 years. You need to have another version. They still haven't figured it out.
Wow.
Because the product has no solvents in it. It's water and
goo juice,
sodium peroxide, and surfactant technology, so it's not even chemical.
Yeah.
And
no, when I had my shop, I had an aluminum tank that held 3 screens, and I used Easy Way.
Yeah.
For the strip.
The problem with aluminum is that
it degrades the
chemical.
Oh, well.
So you have to change it out more often. Because I remember when we put it in mine.
Yep.
You could leave it there for, I mean, basically you just kept topping it off.
A year and a half, because we had one size that was like an 80-gallon.
Yeah. I think mine only fit like 1 screen at a time, 2 or 3 at a time.
No, you had a bigger one. It could actually put 4 in there, but it was, you just did 1 or 2 at a time.
Yeah, well, a smaller shop.
And here's where you actually realized that chemical gets colder, it becomes sluggish. So Brian put a fish tank heater in there. And he
that's right. I totally forgot about that.
And it was ingenious.
Yeah. I remember that.
And the only time
the building, it was up against a block wall. So in the wintertime, it got cold.
Yeah.
I mean, really cold.
God forbid we move it 2 inches out. That would have been stupid.
Yeah.
Or bring it up off the ground on blocks.
Put an electrical component in there.
Yeah, so I'm just throwing electricity in with chemicals, not knowing what.
Heating it was amazing. And the only time I'd use Brian at a show going, how long did you last? He goes, a year and a half before you had to empty it all out. Yeah. And why did you do that?
To get the sludge off the bottom, basically.
A screen hit the fish tank heater and the glass broke.
That's right. I forgot about that. I think that was one of the employees that did that.
So, but still, even then, you had the entrepreneurial spirit, and you're the one that showed me the direct-to-garment.
Yes, we talked about that in the other episode. I saw it roughly '99. Did I have
indie show?
No, when I saw it originally in Chicago in '99, and it was a few years later, I think, that we introduced.
Yep.
It sort of introduced you to that
because it was Scott Fresner had it.
Yeah. Yes.
And I knew Terry Combs there.
The T-Jet.
Yep.
T-Jet, Epson based.
Yep.
You're way back. Well, that's the very, very, very beginning
first
of
one.
Here in the U.S. anyways, as far as that. And that whole history is chock full of, like we talked yesterday, mistakes.
Yep.
And
experimentation,
trial and error. At that point, there was Roman Haas and DuPont were the main ink players. And that is where, you first saw it. It was introduced
I never saw it, and you showed it to me, and I'm like, wow.
Oh, my goodness. Again.
I'm like, you showed it to me, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, the potential of it was phenomenal.
A game changer.
Yeah, it was. Brian being an entrepreneur and being the visionary caught on right away. And he had to bring me along. I'm going, and I'm throwing darts at him. I'm like, no.
Can't
and
do
all
this,
that.
Can't do that.
Because I only know what I know.
Yeah.
And I'm not that visionary guy on there. I know where my strengths are, and it's not that. I'm a great number 2 guy. Where are you going? Okay, let's go. If I'm behind it. But you saw that right away. And that's part of, I think, at the beginning, whatever it was, of what, radio-controlled airplanes? I want to try that. I can do that. I can master it. Yeah. What, screen printing? I've never heard of it. Let's do it.
No, let's do it.
Yeah. And I remember you drawing on a napkin. We were at lunch sometime, and you had an idea in your head. Can we run plastisol through
That was
print
Baltimore.
Head?
That was Baltimore trade
Worst show ever done.
That was way back in the days. But but getting back to a lot of this, you actually, I don't even remember exactly how I convinced you to, you left the industry for a little bit.
Yeah. You actually, and I will say that you didn't convince me to come work for you. I needed a job. So I left the industry, was in the ministry, and I was leaving.
I think you were paying penance. That was the standing joke is, you got me into this mess.
So
you got me into it, so you have to pay penance.
I put my career on hold, went and pastored a church for a few years, associate pastor and stuff. And when that time was done, I needed to kickstart my career.
you kickstarted it with me. That was the wrong.
Well,
but actually, it worked out because it worked out great because that was your first foray really into direct to garment.
I had no idea about it. I learned it from you. You had the T-quoter, but the direct to garment. So it was selling machines. I'm learning. We're learning together.
Yeah, because literally we didn't know much next to anything. This was back when the Brother 541, GT 541 was really first being launched.
Yeah.
And out in the market.
And everything else was Anajets or T-jets and stuff like that in the first iteration of those things. And I saw people were saying it's going to overtake screen printing. Now, I never bought into that.
With something somebody saying about
DTF.
Yeah, right.
And you and I talked about it on, you were commenting on one of the podcasts I do on Q&A, and we were talking about that, and you and I talked about that, and Marshall and I have too, that I've seen this before, and it's playing out with DTF. Is it a great process? Sure. We are in the infancy right now of it.
That's the whole thing.
And my thing, and I talked to Brian about it one time, everybody that started in direct to garment is now gone.
Of
the original.
Well, okay.
Brother came out with the first thing after that, the first of the second generation in my mind.
Well, we talked about that in the other podcasts. It was, Brother sort of, I guess, would be the main player. They sort of followed everybody, brought out a very solid, stable product.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the key. It was more accessible.
People are still running them today.
It was more accessible. It was more expensive, but it was solid.
It was built like a tank, and they do.
And it worked.
Yeah, and they still do. That's still, you were joking that there are people still printing on those.
And and this is where we realize Brother's history is Brother doesn't invent things, and a lot of countries they're fast followers.
Yeah.
Yes, and
which is
and
a
with
smart
the
play.
good improvements, with the
very
good
smart
improvements.
play.
Exactly, and we learned a lot from there. Good and bad, and a lot of people are still with Brother we see. And
love them.
Well, I mean, speaking of fast followers, I think you can take a ton of knowledge from there when thinking about your business as well. You don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
See how somebody's wheel's really working, and maybe it's got a little wobble to it. Make it slightly better.
Yeah.
And or find your niche, shift into a different lane for what you're doing and targeting.
That's not being
and not being serviced for what you're doing. And going back, like you said, everybody thought, oh my God, direct to garment is going to take over screen printing and put screen printing at, but we talked about that before. It actually made the pot of available options for printing bigger. It's not it's not a zero-sum game.
Yep.
Stuff that would never be able to be printed or could be screen printed, but was easier, smaller quantities, multicolor stuff, whatever. It opened up those doors and opportunities for people to expand their business.
We did a job when you had CTTs and 541. We came out of the office, and I remember you and I talking about a job. It was a huge one.
800 shirts.
And it had like this 4-color process on white on back.
And 1 color on
the front. Yep. And we got talking going, do we set it up, the automatic, and do the process, which would take a couple days. And then what we did is go, let's throw it on the 541. Here's what the ink cost is on it, because it wasn't a lot.
No, it was
cheap. Then he kicked out more jobs than there is. So it gives you the ability.
Mixed media. We screen printed the one side and digitally printed the back.
I've done that so many times when I had my shop.
And people don't really think about that, but it's even taking into account DTF, direct to film, direct to garment, and screen printing. Each and every one has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
Screen printing, there's a lot more setup time, tear down, reclaiming, all the fun stuff you get to do with that. Direct to garment is a lot faster on the setup because really there's outside of once the art's done in screen printing or direct to garment or DTF, it's ready to go here, but it does take longer to print. And those are where the trade-offs are.
I tell people, here's the difference. The best part about direct-to-garment is that your ink costs are fixed.
You know what
the worst part about direct-to-garment is your ink costs are fixed. And, you just have to know what it is and isn't. The best part of screen printing is that the more you print, you set up the same amount for 1 or 1 million.
Yes.
Once it's done, it's done. The worst part about it is that your cost goes down the more you do. And then you're limited by the heads on your press and stuff.
Heads on the press and the setup and teardown time. You know,
Absolutely.
If it takes you 2-3 hours to, and I know today with registration and all the new technology, the way that's set up, you can actually go through that process relatively quick.
Yeah.
If you have the proper tools. And we talked about that. A lot of businesses, you work with what you have when you start out, especially when you're small. You do what you have to do. And, you know, I didn't have an automatic when I started. I didn't have the reclaiming dip tank. I didn't have a lot of these things. But as you grow, you can build into that. And you have to, I think, be smart with it. A lot of people, I jumped into the automatic, I think, too early. Really, I shouldn't have, but I did because I'm reckless and I do stupid stuff a lot of times.
But it also set yourself apart in your marketing around in this part of the country where nobody else had it.
Correct, it did, which brought in more business.
Right.
But I think a lot of times you have to assess that risk-reward type thing. Because at that time, it was, I forget what I ended up paying, 40 or 50 grand for that.
Which is what a small automatic went for at the time. Yeah.
Wow. And that's just that. I didn't have the air compressor. I didn't have the screens. I didn't have all the ancillary products that a lot of people don't think about.
Everybody forgets about the bottlenecks.
Yeah, in screen printing, direct-to-garment's really not much different.
Right.
Because
people focus on the printer and then they go, okay, here, this printer, and they're sold. The idea of all you got to do is
the concept.
Yeah, okay, but there's more to it. Pre-treatment is essential to good direct-to-garment.
Yeah.
And there's so many people out there going, oh, yeah, I can just use a spray bottle or a mist bottle or a hand sprayer or something. You can take the best direct-to-garment printer, and it'll still print like crap if the pre-treatment process is wrong. Yeah.
Well, it's like it's like screen printing.
Yeah.
With automatics, it's not about the press. It's all about how quick your setup and tear down.
Yeah. And how fast can you pump through it?
Greg Kitson said about screen printing on his shop, who's like the master of logistics. He goes, we're basically a logistics company. We just happen to print for 3 hours a day. You know, and that isn't that about what it is?
Yeah.
And for most garment decorators, if you can get your logistics and stuff and realize that downtime and setup is where you're losing money at.
Yeah.
So
you're only making money when the press is when the machine's running.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of people really, whether it be screen printing
Absolutely.
or DTF or DTG, is, and we'll talk about this in another episode, but the cost per square foot of the real estate, that whatever you're doing is taking up space and overhead, and and people think, well, it doesn't cost me anything to small shops, single or one employee type shops. It doesn't cost me anything.
There's always
it doesn't cost me anything.
Always a cost.
It's not. It's costing you your time. What's your time worth? And that was one of the biggest mistakes I made, was not valuing myself at a point, and then trying to make that transition from when you gain more employees to more of managing that and trying to figure out how to increase your scales of economy with people and employees, better, more efficient equipment, and being able to hopefully maintain your price, because you can really jack your overhead up if you don't have the work or the proper, like you said, infrastructure and logistics set up. You're going to be going backwards.
Yeah.
There's a lot that people don't think about when getting into it, and I guess it's just kind of par for the course or something. It's like you kind of figure it out as you go, but to be wise and to be smart, and to take it seriously, to make it a long-lasting venture, you have to think about all of this stuff.
Absolutely,
because it all adds up. Yeah. It all adds up. And I made the same mistake when I had mine too.
And it's not. We like to think it's just our industry, but it's not.
It's
my stepdad and I were talking, and he's retired, but he owned a wire harnessing company, and then he also ran Bendix Corporation, their manufacturing, for a while. And he told me there's one thing on new businesses he wished everybody should do, is have a business accounting class.
Yeah.
Because people do not know what their costs are. They do not know what their running costs are, and they don't know what their manufacturing costs are. And to hear him say that where he knows nothing about our industry, it's the same all over. It's the failure of most.
It's the failure. And I think a lot of it, that's
an homage to my friend Marshall Atkinson, who's all about that.
Marshall. But, you know, I think that's sort of what we want to try to do here with the Daily DTG, even though it's more focused on maybe the direct-to-garment side of things. But it's about business. It's about life. It's about how does all this stuff fit together? And our experiences.
What did we say too when we realized that DTG was not going to overtake screen printing? And I remember we started saying, "Look, it's not about because people are going, well, I'm a screen printer, well, and I'm a direct-to-garment, I'm an embroiderer." No, we're not. You know what we are? We're garment decorators. Yeah. And what's the best way to get a fair price, a quality product to your customer? Yeah. And you have to know your market too once you know your cost.
Yes. And you know, whether that be sublimation, direct-to-garment, direct-to-film, screen printing,
embroidery.
What is embroidery? What is the best option? And what am I going to make the most money on?
And do you need to bring in a house? You could always contract it out.
Yep.
Yes. And I've actually recommended that to a lot of people. They're like, hey, I'm looking to get into direct-to-garment or whatever, this and that, and da-da-da-da. And I'm like okay, ask them what their business plan is.
Yep.
And it's sort of iffy. And I'm like, find somebody. Well, I don't want to sell you anything. Yeah. Yep. I want to see you succeed, because if you can succeed, basically that moves you into, okay, now I'm ready I have the capital.
Yep. Yeah.
I have the business. I can buy the equipment.
Yeah.
And there's two, it's sort of like if you build it, they will come type thing. That's not necessarily always true.
Yep.
And that can get your butt into a lot of trouble.
And it has a lot of people.
Yeah. And, I've been there. I can say I've made that mistake. But it's one of those things, it's every situation is different. And I think a lot of it comes down to a personal evaluation too, because it can literally cost you everything if you don't do and plan your business out correctly. Always have a plan and work that plan. But my theory is this, like we talked about before, was shoot for the stars, take what you get. If you blow up on the launching pad, at least you went somewhere, because analysis paralysis, I don't know which is the best machine to go with. If you know you're going to go a direction, move, do something, go with your gut.
Yep.
And a lot of times I think that actually subconsciously you sort of know what the best decision is, but what am I going to do? I got to figure out the best way. You know what? Just do something, because you can always adjust course. If you sit here, you're never going to advance forward.
Well, and I think some people do get hung up on if a bad mistake is made. Say they got a machine that didn't work out or something. Yeah. They get so hung up on that, like, and then you're just full of that resentment and all this stuff. But it's like, you need to learn how to pivot.
Well, but
a
lot of times,
readjust.
I'm sure you've seen this in the industry. People stick with those bad decisions
for too long.
Yeah, and you know what? In life, what do we do? You know, when I'm younger, I'm like, well, what if I make a wrong decision? Okay, well, now I'm like, well, what if you make a wrong decision? Make another one then.
Yeah. But I've seen a lot of people, even in our industry, they're like, well, we paid whatever, all this money for this machine, we have to use it. But here's another option that doesn't cost you anything to replace that bad decision.
Yeah.
But they're like, no, we have to use this, because if they pivot, then they have to recognize that they made a bad decision.
Yeah.
And as humans...
But you know what? That's okay to make a bad decision.
And that's what I think people need to realize is it is okay. That's part of being human and learning, because if you...
take it as a tough knock, you know?
Yeah, tough knock, and notch it up to the school of hard knocks.
Yep, exactly.
Well, it's like, I talked to somebody pretty recently. They bought a direct-to-garment machine that it was just riddled with issues, and they were just, I could tell when they were talking, they were so mad at the choice they made. And I asked, well, are you farming out your work? Well, no, I'm not printing at all right now. Well, what?
Don't stop doing business.
You're stagnating. Yeah, don't stop your business. You have customers. You have people that you can still print for. You can still be making money. You can profit by contracting or having somebody to help you. It might not be ideal, but and it's not the picture that you wanted to paint, but it's a way to work through the issue, come to a resolve, and still continue on.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dean. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You know, we all make bad decisions. we all, you know, in hindsight is always 20/20. I had a customer who bought a bunch of screen printing equipment when he started, and he told me as I got to know him, he started replacing it, and he goes, you know, when I bought this, I thought I made a great decision. And I go, why do you think it's not? He goes, well, I know what I should have bought and what I could have. I go, you know, isn't that like that in life? If I only knew back then what I know now. I said, did you make money? He goes, yeah. I go, you have a profitable business? Yeah. Are you able to upgrade? Yeah. You win.
You win.
Win.
Yeah.
Chalk
you
it
win.
up.
Yeah.
It's a win. There's
It's
a lot
just,
of people
it's
out
just
there that
degrees of winning, but at least you didn't go backwards. And
Exactly.
Even if you did go backwards.
Cut your loss and move on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Learn, adjust, and it's harder to hit a moving target. You know, that's the whole thing. As long as you're moving, because if you sit still, you are going to lose, period.
I think businesses forget that there are highs and lows, and there are going to be downtimes we're going to lose money too. Nobody wants to think about that when they get into it.
And if you don't plan for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Seasonality. Let's face it. A lot of time, well, direct-to-garment specifically, for the online people and everything else, it's from October through right before Christmas. Right now, we're sitting in January, and I think it's typical of the apparel decorating industry in general. January blows because everything.
And so does June.
And June because it's right after school's out.
School's out, and they're not, their corporate's not coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, all the corporate stuff, yes. So, you know, it's one of those things where you sort of have to bake all that into your pricing structure. You can't just, you know, wing it and hope and pray that you make it. I guess that's the big thing too, is we talked about having the plan and working through it.
Yep.
Because, you know, it's like planning for extra employees. If you don't have any employees right now, you have to price that in as though you already have those employees.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't think that way.
Well, and we should have learned anything from the last 3 years. We never know. You know, there's always could be a natural disaster, a medical emergency, a black swan, you know, an epidemic now or a pandemic. Who knew?
Yeah.
And you know, what are we doing? Are you set up for the next thing?
Well, and that brings up a good point. I'm sort of going through it right now. I've talked with the owner of Easy Way, John, about this. I like discussing this with other people. What is, as a business owner, you know, you start a business, it's a living entity. It starts as a baby, you nurture it, it grows. We all get older. What's your exit plan?
Yeah.
And really, a lot of people don't think about that. And even on the manufacturing side of the apparel industry, a lot of the people I've talked to don't necessarily have an exit plan. And those exit plans, I think you have to start thinking about it 20, 25 years ahead of time, because it's going to take at least probably 10 years to implement that. And if you don't have that exit plan, what happens? The business dies.
It does.
That's exactly it.
It's
you know,
the end.
Yeah,
When
they
it
close
ends,
up,
it's
and then
over.
you're selling pieces of the equipment out. But I think a lot of times that's a failure from a business perspective for people that maybe don't have that experience or a mentor. You know, like your uncle, phenomenal business, and was able to pass it. I mean, who officially is running?
My cousin Jason.
Your cousin.
So we're here in little Tuscarawas County, Ohio, and so how I got down here, I said I've moved here from Michigan. My uncle's, I was with my aunt and uncle. They moved down here, and they had started a company called Progressive Foam Technology, which is insulated backer for vinyl siding. He's the inventor of it, and that's right here, just north of New Philadelphia and south. They have 2 plants. And it grew from 0 to, I don't even know what it is now.
A big company. I mean, they're big.
Yeah, and, you know, down here, we were talking earlier, it's, Patrick Culpepper.
Yeah.
And all that. To me, it's just, it's my aunt and
Uncle
uncle, who are 7 years older than me. So, like, my aunt is like, I grew up, she's like my aunt, my sister, my mom, and everything. And, you know, it's hard to think of them that way when it's 9 years, you know, when I met him when I was 9.
That close in
when
age
he started
range.
dating my aunt. So, yeah.
But it's funny because he built an incredibly successful business.
But I know you've talked to him before, just on business. I introduced you, and I did on the pandemic. Going, what do I tell listeners on Q&A? And you know, I'm not a business owner. You know, I'm just a rep.
No,
so.
but you've seen a lot of the backside, and I think that's where panel discussions like this really, because you get different perspectives on
your perspective
stuff.
being that you work with a lot of business,
and we learn from people. You know, I know what I don't. You know, we just don't know what we don't know, and you ask. You ask people who know more than you.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing, especially in this industry. If you're trying to build something, have that exit plan, whether it be retirement or building it up to sell out to somebody else. And I mean, the big thing is what are you in business for?
Right.
You're in business to make money. So I think one of my biggest mistakes with CDTs, when I had my print shop.
That was your baby.
That was my baby. That was my literally firstborn. And as things progressed and I started doing some different things, I held on to it because it was my baby.
Yeah.
Only I could do it right. Only I was the one. And I think that was one of my biggest failures was I could have sold it prior to when I did for a lot more money, but I held on to it. And because of the other ventures I was getting into, it declined. And I basically sold it for assets only.
Right.
And it really wasn't worth that much. That was my biggest mistake. I guess you have to evaluate where you're at in life, what you're trying to achieve, and not be afraid to jettison part of the business, sell it off if you have to, or if even need be, close it down if it's not profitable.
Yeah.
You know, I even struggle with that today.
Well, I remember you and I. So when we started, Dean, so I don't know if you ever saw the building over there. You know, Brian and I's office were in the same part, and our desks were not connected, but
they were
right
on
there.
top
we
of each other.
We would see each
it was
other
like
all the
this.
time.
It was literally.
And, you know,
this
it was easy for Brian because you know I have a voice that doesn't carry.
Oh my
at
gosh!
all.
I had to leave when he was on the phone because if I was on the phone,
booming.
it was like.
My inside voice is everybody else's outside voice, just naturally.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he did that.
This was over on First, right?
No, on North Broadway.
North Broadway.
In the little office we had
Well,
there.
on First
behind the
Avenue,
strip
that's
club,
when we were
right?
in the basement of CDTs. And it was
me, you, and,
and the two geeks, the computer geeks.
Well, that was after we moved back over. We were on North Broadway in the little narrow with the parking in the back that wasn't actually ours.
But before then, we were in the basement when I first started, before we moved
Oh, that's
over
right.
there.
We moved down to the other office. Oh, my gosh. And that basement echoed like, I mean, it was horrible. It was like 7-foot ceilings, open it was horrible.
But those are the things you do when you have aspirations and a vision, and you know,
you do what you got to do.
You know, when I bought your company out, I was over in an industrial complex.
My old company was sold to somebody that you bought it from.
Yeah, was from somebody else. But
small world.
I was in this in a room like with drop ceilings in an industrial complex, and it was just like really bizarre. I would have people that would pick stuff up and they'd be like, "Where are you at?" You know, like, and then they'd get in there and then you build your personal relationship and they go, oh, "Okay." Then they see the stuff that you're capable of doing, and that's really what speaks for
that sets
what
everything else apart. Like
so
we talked about with
you don't
my
have
old
to go,
shop being behind the strip club.
Yeah.
Originally, it's like, what kind of shady operation
That's right. I forgot about that up in Dover. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And I've talked to people who were like, so hesitant to move out of their basement or something, even though they need the space because they can't find the right location. Well, the right location is just going to be what you can afford and the size that you need.
And a lot of times, I think
it doesn't
people
have to look the best.
It doesn't have to look the best. It's what you make it. And it's actually, like we talked about yesterday or the other episode, was your reputation.
Right.
And building the reputation. And from there, the quality of work. If you take care, I have to give Amazon credit. Everybody, it's been both good and bad because now everybody expects free shipping. Everybody expects same-day delivery, all this stuff. And in T-shirts, if you're screen printing, can you do that? Kind of, if that's the only job you got, type of a thing. But
and if you have the inventory
and all that stuff,
there's lots to it.
Here's my thing in garment decorating is, why can't, you can and can't on some. But when people say, how do I compete with custom ink and all that, custom ink should be easy. One, they're expensive.
They're super expensive.
And you know what? But here's the deal. You know why people use them? It's flawless. It's painless.
Yeah.
It's convenient.
They have a good ad spend, too.
Exactly.
Like people would rather go, oh, I heard of them. I saw them on their commercial.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there's a kid down, 5 houses from them that's.
But how many shops have you walked in? You walk in the front door. There's lint everywhere. There's boxes you got to go through of, Gildan 5000s and stuff. And he's going, yeah, come on back here. I'm printing. I can't stop. I'll help you. What do you need and all that? It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Do you have an online store? Do you have something where you can meet with customers at and start doing it where it's painless?
And I think with technology today, having a great website, presenting, we were talking about that before we came on air, was portraying yourself. If you want to be successful, sort of act the part until you become the part.
Yep.
And part of that's presentation online. One, being knowledgeable, don't blowing smoke up people's rear, and being able to perform.
Yep.
Yeah. If you develop that relationship, well, when I had the screen printing shop, hey, Brian, can you pull that off? You bend over backwards for those great customers. And because of that, they keep coming back.
Right.
And I think one of the big things is not being afraid to not be the cheapest.
Yep.
Because anybody that'll nickel and dime you for nickels and dimes, you don't want them as a customer because they're going to pinball all around.
Yep.
And more than likely, they're going to be some of the worst customers you could have.
And it's going to suck your time away. Absolutely.
That was a hard learn
to fire a customer.
Yep.
Exactly. Be nice. Always leave the door open.
I help them find another supplier, like usually my competitor.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, to help put them out of business. If they're going to nickel and dime them down.
Here's your name. Call
this is exactly who you got to go to. Yeah. That's a
So
smart
that
play.
that actually, I think, is something that most people starting a business, especially in the apparel, is being up on the technology, having a website. How do you compete? It's not that hard. I was looking at it the other day. Shopify, they have plugins.
Well, now with AI,
oh my gosh,
that's a whole
other thing.
Yeah, that's
AI
crazy.
is getting insane. I found a whole list of like AI sites, and they're like, this site will do this for you. This site will build you a website. This one will build you an app.
This one will do the graphics for you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
insane. So my mother, she came to me before Christmas. Somebody at her church wanted this veteran's shirt and had a veteran with a flag behind him and all this stuff. Really good artwork and had all this wording on the front. And I'm like, it's my mother. I can't say no.
Right.
But I'm sitting here going, she wants me to design. I'm like going, one, I talked about this the other day. I can draw mean stick figures.
Yeah.
I'm a graphic artist. I can put stuff together. But what she wanted was not something that you could just put together. And I'd started doing research on the AI stuff. So I went to Dolly 2.
Okay.
And put in, I need, on a black background, a soldier carrying a gun with an American flag waving in the background. I did like 8 iterations, and it came up with something that worked, and I just had to drop text in. I had it done in 10 minutes.
Wow.
On a black shirt. I had the artwork done, went to the printer, printed it out. AI, and we're going to do a whole episode on this.
Yeah.
It is insane.
This is where
scary,
this is the part I know about AI a little bit. I've never played with it. So
oh my gosh,
it's crazy.
It is incredibly insane. It is going to. It's not going to replace. I mean, Dean has he has the art background.
Yeah.
It's not going to replace that. It's going to enhance it. I think quite a bit.
But what'll probably help me going, hey, I need this graphic on this because of some podcast or something like that.
Oh my God. I've actually seen other YouTubers. The guy does incredible. It's like, I need 2 tigers fighting each other with a character of me in the middle, holding them back with chains, and it comes up with this incredible artwork. I mean, and the scary thing is you can take yourself and turn yourself into an avatar, and then use that and say, I need my avatar in a certain position doing a certain thing, and it'll do it now. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
And an Alan Howe avatar, that'd be a big one.
Even better, we can now immortalize you forever. We can take your voice, read entire scripts, and then after you're dead and gone, I can say, I'm Alan Howe, this and that, with an avatar.
Do we really need Alan Howe immortalized forever, Dean?
Yes,
I mean,
we do.
okay, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But I mean,
there was your answer. That was cool.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's scary what is able to be done. And when you take that and apply it to, and I think that's where a lot of people can build some freaking incredible businesses in the apparel decorating industry, especially with direct-to-garment.
I mean,
direct-to-film, because all the one-offs and this and that. I actually found a website. They're using it to design. You can design it and then immediately print the shirt.
Wow,
that's awesome.
It was one of those things where you go in and utilize it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a pop-up store doing that?
Yeah,
that'd be incredible.
Yeah. Retail pop-up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I said. So, utilizing the technology, if you can be somewhat forward-looking, can be an incredible advantage. Right. So how do you compete? You just have to be thinking outside the box, like we were talking the other day. Here's the box of rules. Don't play in the box. Play on the
edges of the
outside edges of the box.
Know what's in the box, but open the box up.
You may not know what's way out in the darkness, but if you can play here.
In the shadows.
In the shadows.
Yep.
You can actually be some of the leaders of that. I mean, take a look at, again, Custom Ink. Any of those online guys, when they saw the value of direct-to-garment, a lot of them, were screen printers.
Oh,
Woot.
Yep.
Woot was a screen printer.
Yep,
one shirt a day.
Out of Texas. Yep.
One shirt a day. Different design, and they only ran it for the day. And then next day, whole new design.
Yep.
Then along came direct-to-garment, and that changed, I don't know all the back ends of their business model, but that changed everything for them there too.
I know, so I've actually been into Custom Ink's 2 of their facilities. It's been a while. And they started off as direct-to-garment and then went to screen manual and then automation.
Yeah.
So they're doing the best of both worlds, which is smart for them.
Well, it's expanding the business. And again, it just goes to show
using the right tool for the right job.
Right tool for the right job, and recognizing those tools to expand your own business, whether that be locally in a small town, or even if you are local in a small town, you can compete on a much worldwide scale.
Sure.
You could have an online store. Maybe you have a hobby outside. Like I'm into paramotoring now.
Paramotoring, what is that?
It's
awesome. I'll show you some videos. It's where you strap a big fan to your back and you have a parachute above
200 cc's.
Really?
27 horsepower engine shoving your butt through the air.
Wow.
It's awesome.
Okay.
I'll maybe throw a clip in of my thing. And the funny thing was I just did it last weekend. I froze my butt off, but I got to fly. Anyways,
here at the airport?
No, I take off from my house.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I have to take you out sometime
I
and show
keep
you.
pushing him. He's got to land here at work one.
Oh,
I'm going
in the spring,
Have you been up in a plane with Brian?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so he took me up for the first time.
Now he's got me on this kick. Like, I have goals. I want to get a paramotor now as well.
Oh, okay.
I have some things I have to pay off. It's going to be a while, but I am itching. I would
still the adventure always. So.
But I forget when I took you up.
Just a few years ago. Yeah, it was fun though.
You got to be in that mindset though. You have to be. I think all of us. I think I can speak for all of us that getting into apparel decorating is a lot of hands-on, right?
Yep.
It's not all computer work unless you're just running the business, but there's that hands-on aspect that
learning
a lot of people can relate to. And going back to what you said about trade school and being to learn with hands-on stuff, you have to sort of have that mindset of just jumping in and finding the adventure.
Yeah, and I think that's probably my parents always go, "Whose kid are you? Where did you come from?" and I sit here and go, "I learned it from you guys, I guess." I mean, they never said I couldn't do something.
Your mom's a teacher.
My mom was a teacher. My dad was a field engineer for Verizon GTE.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
the best of both worlds.
But you know what? We never talked business at dinner. We never talked a lot, about.
But they were supportive in what you guys did.
Oh, when I got into radio control airplanes as a middle school, I remember, and it was funny because my uncle, who just died recently, God bless him. Somehow he had a Falcon 56. It was a 56-inch wingspan RC airplane. They bought it from him, gave it to me as a Christmas present.
Yep.
I found out years later they never thought I would complete it and get it flying.
Oh. Yeah.
You know, it was one of those, oh, he's
Here's
just
a little
doing,
project.
he's just
Yeah.
doing something else.
Yeah.
And it's
It'll
like,
fizzle out, yeah.
but I flew that plane to the point where it became known as the black flying. Literally, because it had been crashed so many times, epoxied so much,
repaired,
it barely took off.
Yeah.
But it still flew.
Yeah.
But I learned how to do it. But they never said, you can't do that or whatever. And I think that's the attitude you have to have as an entrepreneur and doing a business, like we talked about before.
For success.
For success
Yep.
is, don't tell me I can't.
Yeah.
Now I have to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
And realize that I think it's personal. You are the only one that sets limitations on yourself.
Right.
You can learn to do anything. I learned how to do freaking index color separations.
Yep.
That, you know, I actually didn't like doing the process printing. I did
Right.
it occasionally, but the index color seps with square dots were freaking awesome. You know, the software from Fresner and Color Crunch.
Not with square dots.
Square dots. Okay, but I'm saying like Color Crunch and all these
You were
others.
using ellipticals, I think.
I did both. Color Crunch had the square.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty darn sure, because I remember doing the square dots because I did a thing for the
Richard Graves
Dover
listening to
band.
this, he's having an aneurysm right now.
I'm sorry. But anyways, but that was way back when. But it was one of those things where I wanted to learn how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember literally, I was probably my own worst enemy. If it didn't work the first time, and for a customer job,
Oh, yeah.
I would tear it down. I remember one job I tore down 2 or 3 times, reburnt 6 screens just to get it to look good because I wanted the customer to have that best product.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was it the smartest business move? No, because I lost money doing it. But I learned for the future stuff.
And this is another rookie mistake is, sure, can I do that? Customer, can we do that? Sure we can. We got to figure out how to do that
figure out
now.
how to do it.
And this is where on something like that, instead of going, I need to learn
give-
4-color process, don't do it on a job.
Don't do it on a job.
Take your time to R&D.
Okay.
In anything, whether it be direct to
Exactly.
garment and stuff, take your time to R&D.
And a lot of times in direct to garment, you see this all the time at the shows. Well, I can't wait to get my printer. I have 300 shirts to print.
Yeah.
You've never
You
printed
idiot.
a shirt yet.
Yeah.
Well,
But
there
you
was
have,
How do we start with one?
Yeah.
Get the machine.
Can we get through that?
Get the machine, learn it, and then get the business. It's not a problem having the business. If you're going to do that,
Let me
farm it
introduce you
out.
to someone that can print this for you.
Yeah, farm it out. I'll contract that out, but don't take that. That's trial by fire, and you can get burnt.
You're going to burn up.
Yeah.
Very quickly, too.
And burn
Yeah.
both ends of that candle, which
Yeah.
I've done. And that's something else that I want to keep reiterating for anybody that's starting in the business. There are sacrifices you have to make, but don't sacrifice your family. I almost lost my family over all that because of working too much and everything else. Don't make that mistake. Find the balance, find that chi, whatever you have to do. Always put your family first.
Yep.
And hopefully you have a supportive spouse in doing whatever you're doing.
Partner.
Deb is amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
She has put up with so much. We still joke about when we were CDTs with the automatic. She would be there folding shirts. Nathan, who's now 21 and a junior in college doing engineering, was in the car seat right next to it, and we always joked about him getting buried under shirts and losing them. And I remember that because we were just popping off 300-400 shirts an hour, and she's back there pulling and tagging and doing all that, But if you don't have that support, if you don't put the effort into supporting your spouse, don't expect them to.
What's it all for?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But don't sacrifice your family just to make a business work.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah. It's not worth it because
you've lost you
you've
lose
lost
your family,
everything.
you've lost everything.
You've lost
Absolutely.
everything, and you're going to die someday anyways.
So
I hate to put it that way.
We've all seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to die someday anyways. Don't sacrifice your family because that's the only thing you have.
Yep. Success is not by how good your business is.
No, or how much money you have, or how many cars.
If that's what your life is,
you've got the
we
wrong
need to have
focus.
coffee.
Yeah,
call
you
us.
need.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I've gone through, and I think every entrepreneur goes through that. You get so focused because you have to do things, but you also, I think that's where some accountability with other people really comes into play. You need somebody to say, Alan, come back over here. You're out of focus a little bit.
You're not outside of the box. You're in the dark side.
You've gone complete dark. You know, and to be honest with you, I didn't really have that, and I didn't. But thank God, my wife is. We joke that she married me for the potential money, and she's still waiting.
She's still waiting. Yeah.
She's still waiting. But you know, it's one of those things where you really need to develop that family structure.
Yep.
And so, if you're listening to this, don't sacrifice. If you're single and don't have a spouse or whatever, that is perfect. Yeah, it's that's great. You can pour yourself into doing stuff, and that's sort of why I've told my oldest, and you guys are young.
Yep.
You're not tied down. Do it now.
Make money.
Sacrifice, and learn everything you can now, because your time is going to get divided. You know, I was working forever. Do you remember? I didn't take a vacation.
I remember your family. You guys went to
Hilton Head.
Was it Hilton Head?
That was our first vacation in 10 years.
No, what was where the sand dunes farther up the coast?
Yeah, Hilton.
Was that Hilton Head?
Yeah, Hilton Head. Because
where the wild horses
are. Clear up on the North Carolina.
Yeah.
The dunes. Hilton Head. Yeah, the dunes and the wild horses run. Well, it was north of Kitty. It's north of Kitty Hawk, but it was right in that area, but way north, because I did some
and I remember you were dreading it.
I was like, that's my first vacation. I didn't know how to relax. I still don't.
I can't remember.
Well, I've learned. I'm sort of high strung, anyways. But you know, it was one of those things where I'm like, oh my God, I'm leaving. Everything's gonna fall apart.
Yep.
And you can't do that to yourself. Yep. You have to find that balance. Yep.
And you know what? It didn't fall apart.
No.
Were there some hiccups? Absolutely.
Oh, there's always.
Did we have to call you going, all right, or text you? And it wasn't even text back.
I don't even remember that.
I think we did it, but you called a couple times. It was like, here's what's going on. Here's how we handled it. Okay, did it work out? Great.
Well, and that's part of the learning process of letting go, because of your baby and learning to let go. I realize now, and I think if everybody that has a business learned this, if the opportunity comes along and you can sell your business and make out, if you're an entrepreneur, you can rinse and repeat and start something new up.
Yeah.
You know, but it comes down to, what are you trying to do and achieve in your business and your life? And that ties back into having the exit plan and actually having a plan to execute.
Right.
And having the vision to take it. You know, we've got some crazy ideas of what we're going to be doing here. But it's just, again, do something, have a plan, do something, move, adjust, keep going.
Keep adjusting.
And keep adjusting.
Wait,
and if you
step back, breathe, adjust.
And, you know, and the best time to do that, I just did that here, because after the holidays, everything slowed down.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, okay, step back, breathe. And it's like, man, sometimes you can get great ideas. You just have to zone out a little bit. Find something you enjoy doing, a stress relief.
Let's, guys, I got a question. Okay, we've talked about this off, but let's talk about this new thing, DTF, that everybody's talking about.
We're going to this is going to be a multiple topic thing. We had such a great time talking with Alan that we have to go into another whole episode for this. So make sure you catch our next episode of the Daily DTG, where we continue our talk with Alan Howe and go more into depth on direct-to-garment and direct-to-film and other related topics in the apparel decorating industry.